Government kills Christians on Easter. An Italian cartoon has the baby Jesus saying the Israelis are going to kill him again. And then there are the cartoons that compare the Jews to the Nazis. It reminds Jews of another period, the time before the Holocaust. In Europe today, most Jews are at minimum anxious. Some are scared, and many have already left for Israel or the United States. Because even though many European governments have condemned the new rise in anti-Semitism, there is a clear perception among many Jews that Europe's terrible history is somehow coming back to life.
The Jewish communities around the world are more under pressure today than at any time since 1945.
Robert Wistrich of Hebrew University in Israel is the son of Polish Jews who fled the Holocaust.
Here we are 60 years after that, and what lessons have been learnt? Not enough.
A survey last year of 5 European countries found that half of those questioned believe Jews are more loyal to Israel than the countries in which they live. That was what the Nazis believed. And almost half of Europeans surveyed also said Jews probably have too much control of international finance, another Nazi view. Almost half also believe that Jews control U.S. foreign policy. The Nazis would have agreed. The editor of Der Stürmer, Julius Streicher, wrote in 1944, "The Jews have made America what it is today, a nation forced into helping the Jews achieve world domination." Leading Holocaust expert Manfred Gerstenfeld says the constant demonization of Israel by the European media and the European left has helped create what he calls a new anti-Semitism against the collective Jew in the form of Israel and Zionism.
All studies show anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism almost entirely overlap. Now, of course, it is very bad to say that you are against the Jews after the Holocaust. So you have found an escape clause to be against the Jews without saying that you are against the Jews, and you say, I am against Israel.
University of Michigan professor Andrei Markovits.
Criticizing Israel, certain Israeli policies, is not anti-Semitic. Criticizing Israel, the state, I would view, is also not anti-Semitic. But when you bring in old anti-Semitic tropes to criticize Israel or to depict Israel as a murderer of God, as the blood libel, as showing them as Nazis, that is anti-Semitic. So it's not that it is being criticized that's anti-Semitic, but how it is being criticized, which make it anti-Semitic.
And Markovits, a self-described progressive or leftist, says hatred of Israel is now a core principle for many on the left. At anti-Israel protests, you'll see radical Muslims and leftists both expressing not just anti-Israel messages, but anti-Semitic messages too. This political cartoon from the London Independent, showing what Jews claimed was an imitation of the ancient blood libel, won Best Political Cartoon Award in Britain. The same cartoon later showed up in a rally by radical Muslims in the Middle East.
The terrorists have allies in European society, in the media, in the NGOs, on academia, among left-wing politicians, in the trade unions.
Take the leftist mayor of London, Ken Livingstone, for instance. He said he's against anti-Semitism. He's also said that anyone who goes to kill Israelis is not a terrorist. And a one-time member of the British Parliament said if she were a Palestinian, she would consider being a suicide bomber. Critics say these views are the result of one-sided news coverage in the European news media that shows Israel as evil. Melanie Phillips is a British conservative.
It's a demonization based on a radical decontextualization, delegitimization that's been going on. And if you are the averagely ignorant Brit watching your TV, listening to your radio, you believe it. That's your worldview.
In France, a court is deciding whether a government TV channel, France 2, showed faked footage of the supposed death of a Palestinian boy, Mohammed al-Doura, in 2000. The French news report made it look like he was killed by Israeli soldiers. But when a judge ordered France 2 to turn over all of its footage, It also showed the boy moving his arms and peering through his fingers after he was supposed to be dead. But Muslim rage at the original France 2 news story led to countless reprisals against Jews around the world. It was even mentioned by terrorists as a reason for the beheading of Daniel Pearl. An EU official says Europe's large Muslim population is responsible for half of all attacks on Jews in Europe. In France, Muslims outnumber Jews 10-1. And Nidra Poller in Paris says the government and media are afraid of the Muslims.
They showed the whole Hezbollah war was shown from the Hezbollah point of view. Israel was the villain, and Hezbollah were the innocents who were suffering. So all of the Muslims in France got another dose of Jew hatred.
And during the 2006 Israeli-Hezbollah war, anti-Semitic violence in Europe surged. Anti-Semitism is by no means just a European problem, but it is in Europe, the place of the Holocaust, where the return of anti-Semitism is so surprising. As a boy in the Netherlands, Manfred Gerstenfeld hid from the Nazis in an upstairs apartment. He may have never thought it could happen again, but now says he believes Europe is reliving the 1930s.
A senior Dutch politician said to me a couple of months ago, I said, look, the Jews have to understand that in the Netherlands they have no future.
In large part because Israel lost the media war in Europe long ago, and now the Jews are paying for it. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Today, more than 60 years after the Holocaust, parts of the world are experiencing a dramatic resurgence of anti-Semitism, from hate propaganda to vandalism to attacks on Jews themselves. Reports from research groups such as the Stephen Roth Institute for the Contemporary Study of Racism and Anti-Semitism indicate a significant increase in anti-Semitic incidents worldwide since the year 2000, with the annual average number of major violent incidents nearly doubling from 1990s levels. It is particularly severe in Western Europe, where research also shows that since the year 2000, Muslim and Arab youths were increasingly responsible for attacks against Jews and Jewish properties. Meanwhile, outside of Europe, in more and more Arab and Islamic communities around the world, there is an alarming increase in anti-Semitic rhetoric in the political and public arenas, especially in the mainstream media.
أن كل فتن التاريخ وكل مشاكل التاريخ صاحبها وموقدها هم اليهود.
عرف عن هذا الشعب حتى في توراته أنه شعب يقتل جيرانه ويقتل أولاده.
What is fueling the rise in anti-Semitism in the Islamic and Arab worlds today? What real threats does it pose? And how can history help us better understand what's happening?
We are PBS.
בריטניה אנחנו נשארים, הרבה בעיות פנימיות השאיר ראש ממשלת בריטניה טוני בלר בבית כשיצא לכאן. אחת מהן היא התגברות האנטישמיות. דוח שפרסם הפרלמנט בלונדון מצביע על עלייה חדה בגילויי אנטישמיות בתחומי הממלכה. רק בחודש שעבר נרשמו יותר